We have an opportunity right now to speak with a lawyer whose practice is very focused on both of those things, bullying and cyberbullying. Please welcome Jasmine Daya to London Live. Jasmine, thanks for taking some time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jasmine, when you focus in on bullying and cyberbullying, it leads the rest of us to think, whoa, I was hoping bullying would be kind of on the downturn, but now if you're able to specialize in cases, how would you describe the number of cases that you come across?
The number is increasing at an alarming rate, and it's really upsetting. As a mother of 3 children myself and as a lawyer, I cannot tell you how many stories I have heard where I am listening to parents, I'm in shock, I'm wondering how these parents are holding it together. I myself am just holding back tears with that knot in my throat when I hear the types of stories I'm hearing.
Wow, okay, and when you're looking at these stories, do they have similarities?
There's the one common thread are actions of individuals that I don't believe recognize how severe the consequences will be of their actions. So you have young people saying things, doing things, posting things on social media, sending messages through Snapchat or through text to other individuals, not recognizing the impact that it's going to have on the person that becomes the victim. And unlike bullying, so when you had bullying, it was, a little scuffle in the schoolyard, some taunting, but you could leave that behind when you left school and go to your safe place, go home, be with your family. With cyberbullying, you can't escape it. It doesn't matter where you go, whatever has been said about you is out there, and it could be out there permanently. There's no way to erase what is out there, and so it's inescapable.
We're talking with Jasmine Daya, who is a lawyer and is someone who deals with cases that typically center on bullying and cyberbullying, and the idea that those now have to involve the law, and we'll talk about how that transition is made. Jasmine, we have so many things that are happening now. In London, we have the Upstander program. In London, we have, as many places do, Pink Shirt Day, which is taking place today, encouraging people to recognize things, to look at ways of perhaps curtailing bullying, and yet you're talking about things being on the rise. Do you believe any of the initiatives are having an impact, or is it just the fact that it's so much easier to bully these days that it becomes more prevalent?
I think that the initiatives are doing well, and we need to continue to focus efforts on those initiatives. But the issue is that the number of individuals, the number of young children with devices is also increasing. I mean, you've got every young child that's in a waiting room at a doctor's office or at restaurants. Everyone's got an iPad or an iPhone. And so they all have access to technology at an increasing rate, which means that people are engaging in bullying and cyberbullying at also an increasing rate because they don't always recognize what their actions will mean in the future.
So in terms of finding the connection between the schoolyard or parent to parent or wherever it would happen to go that may have been where the containment stopped, how do these cases get to you? What is happening and what are maybe even the charges that can come up with regard to bullying?
If there is an incident, if you suspect that your child is the victim of bullying, my advice is to first go and research the situation. You want to advise the school teachers. You want to notify the school principal, have conversations, see if that can rectify the issue. If you need to escalate, then you're going to go to the school board superintendent. Talk to them, see if that will deal with the issue. You might want to reach out to the parents of the bully if you feel comfortable with that. Some parents are very open to a conversation to try to help. And then you have some parents that say, no, not my child. They would never do that. So you don't always know what you're going to get. If you believe that there is some criminal activity, so cyberbullying involving criminal harassment, threats, intimidation, extortion, anything on the criminal side, you definitely want to report things to the police so they can do a proper investigation. Hopefully, going to a personal injury lawyer is a last resort. I am happy to help, but I would rather not see these cases happen altogether. I think it's a very sad situation. But when people are coming to me, it's because they've exhausted all other resources, and now they need help from a compensation perspective. If I can continue along, I'll give you one quick example of a child. It's not my child, but I call them my children. One of my young clients. She was on suicide watch for several weeks, and she missed months of school, and she had to be home. Her mother took time off work. Her mother then was not being paid, was unable to keep up with the bills. She wasn't able to pay the mortgage. And now the mother is either going to have to sell the house or is at risk of losing her house to the bank. So the reason they've come to me is because there are these other issues now where they're seeking compensation.
Isn't that remarkable that something that would start in, say, a schoolyard or inside a classroom or somewhere that would seem relatively innocent, even though all of us who have been through things like this know it's not necessarily innocent, but you wouldn't think it would have the ability to go that far, but you're seeing it go that far.
I am seeing it going that far, and I think it's really important to make people aware that we're not talking about just pushing or shoving or teasing. We're talking about ongoing, repeated behavior that causes significant psychological ramifications to the victim. I have a client that started cutting herself. I've got clients, as I said, on suicide watch. I have clients that suffer from PTSD, anxiety, depression, and these issues are going to be lifelong. I also have clients that have pre-existing conditions, so they're already susceptible. And when you compound that with what they're dealing with in the schools or online, that's going to make life really tough for them. And when it comes to starting a lawsuit, it's not that we're saying to the bully necessarily, to the person that engaged in these actions, that this was your fault, you young child. I'm looking at the bigger picture. If the school knew that there was bullying and chose to do nothing about it, how is that okay? We've entrusted our children to the education system that is provided for them. How is it okay that our children are not being properly taken care of?
Jasmine Daya joining us from Jasmine Daya and Company in Toronto, personal injury attorney, and we're talking about bullying and cyberbullying. Now, Jasmine, because you deal with so many of these cases, how often do you find that a parent will say, hey, we went to the school, we tried, and there wasn't anything they can do? Does that happen?
Yes. I hate to say it because I know how hard our educators work. I know how hard our teachers work, and I know there's a lot going on with teachers in Ontario right now. But, in the cases that I have seen, I just don't see that enough was done to prevent the situation. And, sometimes it's a balancing act where the schools, in a way, their hands are tied to some degree, or at least they feel their hands are tied because they have to balance the interests of both sides. And, they can't take away rights from one child to try to help the other. I've heard everything. But when it comes to the safety and well-being of our children, and I see a child that doesn't want to live anymore, that wants to end their life, and the schools failed to do something about it, I'm sorry. I just don't see the balancing act there. I think the choice is clear.
Jasmine, finally, what would you recommend if someone hears that their child is bullying or if someone has a child who is being bullied?
I would recommend continuing ongoing communications with the child. First and foremost, you want to make sure your child feels like they can come to you. You want to constantly communicate, keep your eye out to see warning signs. Is the child being bullied? Then you want to communicate with everyone that's involved, caregivers, teachers, doctors, anyone that can help with the situation. You want to involve them and make sure that the best result is coming for their children.
Well, Jasmine, thank you so much for talking with us today and looking at this from the angle that you do. It's pretty wild to think that you're using the word extortion and you trace it back and it goes to bullying.
Yeah, I know. It's very sad. And hopefully with the awareness like what we have today on Pink Shirt Day, we will see a decrease in what we've seen in recent years.
Here's hoping. Jasmine, all the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the London Live Podcast. Catch the show live on weekdays from 1 to 3